A good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round 3 of the AROC Racing League's historic championship. We're in qualifying with Matt Daly just getting it a little bit wrong there. And we are at Oulton Park this evening. On board at the moment with Steve Knight. Has some company out on track here in qualifying. Very much looking forward to this one, folks. Oulton Park, fantastic venue. A track I literally drove past just before. It's local to myself here in Cheshire, so great to see it out on the circuit. As it goes a little bit wrong there for Steve Knight. In just a moment. Under 5 minutes to go in qualifying in this one. So it should be pretty hotly contested at the moment. Currently being led by Matt Daly. And we're back to the good old 105 series issue of the cameras are really enjoying pointing in the rear seat. Matt Daly, Andrew Whitehead, Colin Keneath, Andy Craker, Miles Davis, Alan Matthews, Jack Hodson, Guy Swarbrick, Mike Hilton, Andy Webb, Alex Smith, Paul Millman, Steve Knight are your 13 cars currently competing in this session. It's certainly going to be an interesting one this evening, seeing a few drives reporting on a few tricky curbs there. Colin Keneath nearly falling foul of one just towards the second half of the lap here, but is able to continue on. So the curb's going to be on to watch out for this evening, folks. We've already seen just how much these softly sprung 105 series cars can be upset by certain track features. So it'll be interesting to see things play out this evening. I should apologise ahead of time. You might be able to already tell I'm quite under the weather at the moment, so we're going to have the same usual level of gusto and excitement and energy as sometimes we get from Mr. Reeve, because not feeling 100% at the moment. I've got an in-person company happening on Sunday, so hopefully that ends itself. Either way, Colin Keneath is the driver on board at the moment. A 1 minute 53.3 is his best time so far. Near enough a second slower than Matt Daly, as we have the ominous onlookers making their return here at Oulton Park. Oh my God, they've split into two there. That is a cell replication going on there within the audience here at Oulton Park. So that's a new one. We get nearly a second from Matt Daly. It's been a while since we've seen such a long, or rather such a large delta between our two protagonists in the championship, the difference being split there by Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead obviously has a lot of work in and has been doing plenty of practice as well for this Oulton Park round, and has been rewarded with some pretty impressive pace at the moment. Not quite there with Matt Daly at the moment, although I don't know if anyone will be able to. I think that's for Matt Daly special is that first lap. And yeah, looking very good indeed for some of our drivers here. And once again, as we've seen over the past few rounds already in this early part of our new seasons for 2025, mid-pack looking very exciting indeed. Everyone's looking very close and closed up in that midfield action, so I'm looking forward to seeing what our drivers can make of that. I just hope that my throat and my throat holds out this cold. It's been a nasty one. So hopefully I'll make it through the next couple of hours of racing, because it should be very enjoyable indeed. Just over 60 seconds left on the clock, and we've actually still got a few drivers improving in terms of their times out there, so I might jump on board with them as we progress later into this session. And it's Andrew Whitehead, a 4/10 of a second gap between himself and Matt Daly, leaning through the bends And we head on through now down the hilltop straight there, climbing up that elevation. Of course, you can guess where it gets its name from. Andrew Whitehead looking pretty comfortable, has a nice bit of gap to the cars out in front of him. We're seeing the likes of Colin Keneath, Andy Craker, and Andy Webb coming towards the end of their session now. 30 seconds left on the clock, and they've just started the next lap. So it will be their final run around here this evening. I think it will be as well for Andrew Whitehead. He's just heading around the water tower left-hander into Druids. We'll go, and I don't think he's going to make it down towards Lodge in enough time. So that will be it for Andrew Whitehead in this session. So let's stay on board with these drivers as they bring an end to their run. Here we go then, just one corner left to negotiate. It is the drop down Lodge and into the Deer Leap. For we see Andrew Whitehead will actually get another lap in. Miles Davis cannot. He remains P5 as it stands, the 154.3. Then we have Andy Webb, Jack Hodson, Paul Millen, Steve Knight also completing their laps. Andrew Whitehead has been classified as completing the lap there. So the next driver to come across the line, as we see Alan Matthews flying on past, will be Colin Keneath. Colin Keneath is currently heading up and up the clay hill rather. Will be dropping into Druids in just a moment, using as much of the tarmac as he can, using all that surface area of the circuit to get the car to dive into the right-hander of Druids. An off-camber braking zone is a true test of a chassis of a car, is this final part of Oulton Park. And it is a real test of these vintage machines. But around Lodge we go through the Deer Leap. What's it going to be for Colin Keneath? Matt Daly brings an end with a 151.9. That's a blistering time. What can Colin Keneath do, though, as we head across the line to 153.0? Does improve, but not enough. What a flyer from Matt Daly late on in this session. Next driver to be coming across the line, last driver actually, will be Guy Swarbrick. Haven't got an accurate delta for him, so we'll just have to go play it by ear as we run down through the exit of Druids and into Lodge in just a moment. Trying to improve upon a 155.5 is Guy Swarbrick. If he does so, he'll close up on a Jack Hodson. That'll be a really nice run for him in that classically blue liveried car. Through Deer Leap we go. What's it going to be as we climb up the elevation once more? It's not an improvement, and Guy Swarbrick dives into the pits, in fact. That brings an end to qualifying, and what a drive it was for Matt Daly. I must say, Andrew Whitehead looking like he improved as well, 152.8. But yeah, Matt Daly there shining with a 151.9. No one can touch him so far in qualifying. Let's see what he can do, though, in the racing in just a few minutes' time. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, on the grid and ready for race one here at Oulton Park. It's Matt Daly, Andrew Whitehead fighting it out on the front row. Watch out for Colin Knief, Andy Craker just behind with Alan Matthews and Miles Davis really shining in qualifying here as well. Followed by Andy Webb, Jack Hodgson, Guy Swarbrick, Mike Hilton, Alex Smith, Paul Millen and Steve Knight here this evening to give us some fantastic racing action. Very much looking forward to it, and we don't have long to go now, just over 30 seconds before we run down towards the Old Hall right-hander for our first real overtaking opportunity of the evening. It's a tricky corner to negotiate, so let's see how our packed field of drivers can do so. Obviously, I remember a few years back in these cars, actually, heading through Cascades and the Island Bend, my most infamous AROC Racing These commentary moment was born. Hopefully we get a few more exciting moments here this evening as well, as we do have 6 red lights on the gantry and the revs rise. We are away for race one this evening. A good start there for Colin Knief. Andrew Whitehead slightly bogging down, but a pretty good start as well for Matt Daly. That means he can box off these two, who are now going side by side and making contact. Matt Daly goes a little bit wide into the Old Hall corner, but continues on. We have another car off wide as well. I believe that is Mike Hilton potentially. No, it's not. It's Jack Hodgson. Jack Hodgson, who is tumbling down the order with a tricky start here at Oulton Park. We head on through, though, with our front runners. It's going to be Matt Daly and Colin Knief as big contact there involving Miles Webb, Alex Smith, as they are spun round and are out of the running pretty much. What a shame that their race has already started like this. Here we go then. Look on to the Shell Oils right-hander. Fantastic camera shot here of the action. It's Matt Daly who leads us through the long extended hairpin, with Colin Knief and Andrew Whitehead, just behind in tow here. Through Britons we go then, a tricky kink through the left and the right as we have the ominous onlookers staring into the camera once more. It's not distracting at all. Yeah, it's a really tricky corner to negotiate. It can upset the back end of the car so much here as we head on through now. Matt Daly still leads from Colin as we see side by side go Miles Davis and Guy Swarbrick fighting it over for P6. In the end, Miles Davis wins out. Colin Knief goes wide and off the circuit. Is that a big spin? No, he hasn't spun. He is going to be able to rejoin, but look at the time that he's lost, folks. He has lost multiple seconds there. Andrew Whitehead's back up into second. Then we have Andy Craker in third, Alan Matthews and Miles Davis now your top 5 in this race. Colin Knief has tumbled all the way down to 8th position with that one small error running through Hislops and Knickerbrook before we head up through into Druids once more. We're looking at Druids now on the run down towards Lodge Corner. It's still going to get pretty eclectic, I suspect. It's such a busy circuit. It's high speed is Oulton Park, but it does narrow and slow down at various points. And these old cars, they're not the best in terms of the brakes, and they're certainly not the best in terms of stability as well. We've got a decently sized grid here. It's going to be some very exciting moments here out on track. Here we go then. Matt Daly leads us by 1.5 seconds. And looking pretty comfortable up there, just as he did in qualifying. He led qualifying by around about 1 second. The gaps that are now beginning to form. We're all looking pretty consistent until you get to the gap just behind Alan Matthews. Miles Davis is trying to put a little bit of pressure on Alan Matthews if he can. Guy Swarbrick, though, is very close indeed to Miles, but Guy Swarbrick is the one feeling the pressure from Colin Knief at the moment, and that is a tricky position to be in. We just know how much of a fierce competitor Colin Knief is. We know just how much instinctive pace that he has under his belt. So it's going to be a very tall order indeed for Guy Swarbrick to try and keep Colin Knief behind. If he is going to try and make that work, he might be thinking about his own race and might let Colin Knief on through. No, what he's going to do instead is take a little bit too much to the curb and do some 105 series based acrobatics there. Guy Swarbrick is off and into the grass. Might be our first example of commentator's curse for a little while there, as Guy Swarbrick is unfortunately dropping down to 10th. Andrew Whitehead to have big issues as well. This is huge for our race. He was in second, was Andrew Whitehead. Now finds himself down in 9th and potentially under threat here from Alex Smith. Alex Smith and Guy Swarbrick, who's been able to get back onto 4 wheels, which is the most important thing. It's very impressive indeed from Guy to do that. It's not a given. And is currently running in 11th. He's one of the drivers putting a bit of pressure on Alex Smith here. Andrew Whitehead will surely find a way past. He has some great pace underneath him, but this just makes things a little bit more comfortable for Matt Daly out in front. It's Matt Daly, Andy Craker running in P2. Then we have Alan Matthews just behind. Just behind there, it is Miles Davis, who's really feeling the heat now from Colin Keneath. We're running down towards Cascades in just a moment, and here we go. Having a look down the inside is Miles Davis, loses the position to Colin Keneath, but tries to claw it back as we go around the long sweeping left hand, and we are side by side. Who gets more momentum? It's going to be the car in yellow. The car in yellow is the one that gets a nose out in front as we head down through the island bend. It's still the inside line here for Myers. It could be hugely beneficial. If not, he's going to lose out into the Shell Oils corner as Colin Keneath does as the inside goes late on the brakes. Does he go too deep into the corner? I don't think he does, but Miles gets a fantastic run on through. He has eventually relinquished the position, but it must be said he's still pretty close indeed. Here we go then. We're going to run through Britain's once more. And it's Colin who begins to build up a bit of a gap now on Miles Davis. Miles Davis has a little bit of a squirm at the back end there. That means he loses some pace and is able to continue on, but is running down in 5th for the time being. This is hotting up quite nicely though. Still looking on at this midfield battle here, being led by Andy Craker, then Alan Matthews. Those two now to battle each other. Colin Keneath in the mix here as well, and Miles Davis did lose out to Colin a lap ago, but is still very much in the mix here. Heading round through the island bend before we drop into Shell Oils once more. Colin taking a much tighter line actually as we run through the long sweeping right-hander. Alan Matthews goes a little bit deep into the corner, but actually hasn't lost all too much in terms of pace overall. Colin Keneath did carry more speed on corner entry, though. It was great to see these little twin cam 1.8 litre cars. Oh no, sorry, they are 2 litre. Very well. As I said, I'm a bit unwell here. I'm very much not on my A game this evening, if you can't already tell. Either way, lovely little twin cam 4-cylinders. Cars, is what I meant to say. As Andy Craker unfortunately is spun off running through his lobs here. That is a terrible shame for Andy Craker, running quite nicely in 2nd in this race and has unfortunately relinquished that position. Colin Keneath now, after that unfortunate race start, finds himself running in P3 now. That is a great turnaround in fortunes for Colin Keneath this time out. Miles Davis, though, this is really impressive from one of our rookie drivers, keeping that momentum up, very much keeping Colin Keneath busy, despite this only being his, well, 3rd race in historics, 5th race overall if you count in the touring cars, and he's matching Colin Keneath, keeping Colin Keneath occupied. The top 4 then, currently occupied. Or, sorry, currently covering 10 seconds in this race. So that top 4 at the moment. There's Miles Davis, Colin Keneath, and Alan Matthews heading through the Cascades left-hander as we speak. Matt Daly is pretty much checked out. Perhaps it's not a surprise, given the qualifying pace that he did demonstrate. So let's have a look at how the championship is shaping up then so far this season. Eventually, I'll get those graphics back up that I used to have. But I think I tried them for about 2 races, and then I will give him another go at some point as we see Andrew Whitehead get past Paul Millman here. Look at who else is getting pretty close to each other in a few moments' time. Right now it's Matt Daly who leads the charge in this race. And in terms of the championship, he is doing pretty well as well. In terms of that championship, he's currently running in P3. Colin Keneath has pretty much cleared the rest of the pack already this early on the season with an impressive 80 points under his belt. Then it's Andrew Whitehead, currently down in 8th position, second, further down by 31 points, so he's at 59 points at the moment. And this will be a race weekend that could really benefit Matt Daly here. This is exactly the type of weekend that, I don't know, say for example, Lando Norris needs to have against Oscar Piastri, although that's likely these days. And it is going to be Colin Knief leads the charge, currently running in P3. Then we have Matt Daly, 45 points to his name in P3 in the championship. Just behind is Alan Matthews. Again, another great race weekend here for Alan Matthews. Colin Knief might be trying to spoil it ever so slightly as we head onto the start-finish straight once more, but it's going to be Alan Matthews currently running in P2 in this race, P4 in the standing with 40 points. And then it's Miles Davis, a really respectable 34 points in 5th position for our rookie driver here. And then we have Greg Young, Andy Craker. Andy Webb matches him in terms of points, so they're both 7th and 8th. We have Jack Hodson and Guy Swarbrick, 20 points and 16 points respectively for 9th and 10th. And it's John Cole, Mike Hilton, Paul Millman, Alex Smith and Steve Knight, your remaining championship standings in this season's action so far. Alan Matthews still leads Colin Knief at the moment. The gap is around about 0.5 of a second as we have just crossed the 10-minute marker in this race. But very late on the brakes goes Colin Knief. Alan Matthews was quite entitled to the racing line there because, you know, he was the car out in front but was going a little bit slower, and there was nearly a fairly hefty collision as we've just seen Andy Craker going off and into the grass at the Shell Oils corner. Back onto the tarmac he does go, but is certainly compromised on that run there. That's a little bit less than ideal for Andy Craker, running in second earlier on in this race, now finds himself in 6th. I think that was just a heavy lock-up, which caused that one there, caused him to scrub across the tarmac and towards the barrier. Did well to keep out of it, though, as we run through the chicane on one of the back straight sections of this circuit. As I've mentioned, it's a local circuit to myself. It's a fantastic venue, such high speeds, a really great place to go racing. I need to get more track days under the belt here if the cars are up for it. But someone who's certainly up for a bit of action here is Matt Daly. He currently leads by a substantial margin. On board with Matt Daly at the moment. He leads with a comfortable 10-second margin, as I say. But the rest of the pack, I must say, we're towards half race distance now, and most of the pack, well, everyone bar Andy Webb, I'm not quite sure what happened to him in his race, is on the lead lap at the moment, and our top 10 still covered by around about 30 seconds. Impressive stuff from our drivers here. It is a technical venue. It's a tricky circuit to master. So it's great to see everyone able to keep the nose clean and continue to push on. I mentioned it before, I'm going to mention it again. Guy Swarbrick's delivery, top notch, really. He used to run the Carbon. I was discussing it in round 1 at Silverstone. He was a fan of his Carbon and feels like, you know, he's lost his weight advantage potentially with the lack of the carbon fibre, but that lovely blue scheme does work quite nicely indeed. So then we look on to Colin Knief and Miles Davis. These three are in a bit of a stalemate at the moment, it must be said, and not too much in terms of change, really, for these drivers battling it out for the podium. Look a little bit further down as well, we see Mike Hilton and Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead putting that pressure on Mike Hilton. Mike, I did see, struggled to get a clean lap in during practice, but seems to have mastered that now, and Andrew Whitehead, obviously, he'll have to get some clean laps in. Didn't quite manage that at the start of the race, though, so he'll be hoping to use some of that skill to find a way past Mike Hilton if he can do so. Let's see as we go pretty much side by side. Running in to... Oh, for Mike Hilton, it does go a little bit wrong. I was about to say we run into the Druids right-hander, and Mike Hilton could be on with an outside chance here of hanging it round the outside, defending the position. Unfortunately, it goes very wrong indeed. I believe Colin Knief has been involved in a collision. It's not a substantial one, but Colin Knief has found a way past Alan Matthews after being under threat from Miles Davis for so long in this race. He does find a way past. In the end, does Colin Knief. We weren't expecting the overtake to be done potentially on Alan Matthews so early on because it's just been a complete stalemate so far. But in the end, it's Colin Knief up into second Alan Matthews third, Miles Davis fourth. It'll be interesting to see how Miles Davis approaches this now. He sat behind for a few laps and wasn't able to find a way past Colin Knief. Maybe he will have better fortunes against Alan Matthews here as we head around the Shell Oils hairpin once more. I mean, it's not too right here. It's a slightly banked right-hander, really. Only very slightly. As we head into Britain's. Colin Knief goes up onto two wheels. That spits him towards the grass. Takes a bit too much out of that curb, does Colin. And that is momentum lost for the car in orange and black. Alan Matthews stays in P2. Colin Knief in P3. And Miles Davis running in P4. Having a look down the inside is Miles Davis. They make substantial contact. It ricochets off the tyre wall. Does the car in a yellow and red. Disaster for Miles Davis. He does continue on. It's disaster for him, and it's P4 after that skirmish with Colin Knief. apologies for the small interlude there, as I say. Not at my best this evening. But just over 5 minutes to go in this race. Matt Daly still leads us, and we're enjoying an enthralling battle between Alan Matthews and Colin Knief at the moment, with Alan Matthews leading the charge here. Colin Knief did impress in qualifying, but it's not quite the championship leading pace that we've previously seen from Colin. That's not to say he's slow at all. In fact, I wonder if half of it is his competition has just sped up and is absolutely with him in terms of speed here at Oulton Park as they run through Shale's Corner. That's actually a great camera shot there. We saw just how much of an elevation change there is on offer here at Oulton Park as we dive on through Britain's there. Alex Smith has a big off by the looks of things. He is able to continue on back on track. He is currently running in P11 and the points a little bit elusive so far early on in the season. Still in the lead lap though is Alex Smith. So I'm sure the next race might give him another opportunity. We still have plenty of room to go in this season. So Matt Daly still leads the charge. Andy Craker looks to have had an issue out on track. He has indeed. He waits for an opportunity to rejoin the circuit. Is able to do so, but down in P6. This promotes Andrew Whitehead up into P5 at the moment. As we see the battle between our two drivers on the podium here rages on into the final few moments of this race. How close to get through the Shell Oil's right-hander. Hasn't quite worked out yet. Matthews doing an impeccable job of holding Colin Knief here. I think it's what we've seen, some fantastic battles at the top end of this race so far. I think it bodes well for our reverse grid race coming up in a little while. Because, yeah, we're going to see another chance for our front-running drivers to have another crack at battling each other out on the track in a reversal as well. Up the hill we go with our two front runners here. Alan Matthews very much on the defence here. We can see him using the circuit as much as possible as it undulates left and right to his advantage. Stays in a near enough straight line. He's weaving a little bit in order to defend, which he is entitled to do so. It's proper old school touring car racing. It's what we like to see. As we run through Druids, there is Miles Davis driving into shot as well as Andrew Whitehead, and it's into the final corner of Lodge once more. Get a bit of a drop before you have to climb once again. Some cars that are slightly lower powered might struggle with it a little bit. These cars might just about fall into that category, I can imagine, if you're not right on cam, aka if you haven't nailed the exit of the final corner and got those revs nice and high, you're going to be struggling before the car climbs on cam and you get a little bit more power available to you. Alan Matthews still ahead of Colin Knief at the moment by around about 0.2 of a second. That gap is shortening though, as we saw Colin Knief having a look down the inside. We're going to head down towards the left-hander of the island just a moment before it's the infamous Shell Oils. But I'm very wary whenever we see this part of the track on camera. Over the incident we saw a few years ago. I don't think we're going to see it ever again, which is a shame. Perhaps the best. Anyway, around the right-hander, Alan Matthews still in the lead. What a drive this has been from Alan Matthews, I must say. Has not cracked under pressure once, seemingly, in this battle. A little bit of netcode creeping in there. That doesn't affect the battle that we're still enjoying out on track. As we can see, Colin Knief, it looks like out the exit of some of the corners, he is getting a slightly better run. He's closing up towards Alan Matthews in the braking zones, but nothing that Colin can really do against Alan Matthews, because he's still keeping an immense pace, is Alan. And The corners come thick and fast, and the overtaking opportunity can be a little bit trickier here. So that does mean that so far Colin Knief has really had to work to try and find a way past. Hasn't worked out just yet. The question is, will it? Now that we have the added dynamic of Steve Knight out in front, some lapped traffic, and that does play an effect in this race. It's not to say that was Steve's fault. Steve is occupied, is more than entitled to run around the circuit as he pleases. We asked that drivers don't get in the way, but I don't necessarily think that was Steve getting in the way. He was running at full pelt around that right-hander. What a shame, though, for Alan Matthews. A race going so well for him. Fortunately, drops down into P5. Colin Knief continues on in P2. Then, as the timer does indeed hit 0, we're on the penultimate lap of this race with Matt Daly as he heads around Cascades. And Colin Knief then wins out against Alan Matthews in the end in P2. And Miles Davis currently runs in P3. Really impressive run out for a new driver to the series. And I am right in thinking that this could well be Miles Davis' maiden podium here in the AROC Racing League. So let's hope that that is the case for his sake. What a well-deserved accolade that would be. But Andrew Whitehead is going to be a thorn in his side and wants to make sure that that doesn't happen in the final moments of this race. Taking a slightly tighter line is Andrew Whitehead as they run down on through. We go side by side, the Shell Oils corner, and through goes Andrew Whitehead there. It was a dream. It was a short dream, but it was a dream nonetheless for Miles Davis to potentially be on the podium here. I mean, we still do have over a lap to go in this race for these two here, so don't count anything out just yet. Miles Davis still running in P4, be a really comfortable point scoring position here, and it will bode well for his championship. But when will that podium come? Could it be in this race? I'm certainly sure if it isn't in this one, it will be in the next few. He's got the pace to do it, has Miles. So it'll just be a case of when and not if for Miles Davis here. Climb once more with Andrew and Miles, but we jump on board with Matt Daly, who gets ready to start the final lap of this race. We've barely seen any of Matt Daly in this evening's running so far because he's been doing such a nice job out in front of the 16 seconds that Matt Daly has over his competitors this evening. A really impressive run. We also want to have a quick look at what's going on in the lower midfield because look, we've got Jack Hodson, Guy Swarbrick, and Andy Craig here. They're running up on through towards the Clay Hill and in to Druids we go in a moment. This could get very interesting indeed. Matt Daly is currently heading around the left-hander of Eamon Bent, so we've got a little while to go before we need to jump on board with him. Let's enjoy these three battling it out for P7 at the moment. Listen to that sonorous little twin cam roar its way through Oulton Park. We drop down the hill once more before the Deer Leap, as we see it gets a little bit scruffy there for Andy Craker. Jack Hodson is able to continue on. Guy Swarbrick's ever so slightly closing up. Nothing he can do just yet. Actually runs a little bit wide there, looking like he might have missed the gear. I think Guy Swarbrick has missed the gear. We heard the revs rise substantially then. That has allowed Andy Craker to have a look down the inside here. Not going to work out this time, and that gives him the inside for the next left-hander for Guy Swarbrick. They make contact in typical touring car fashion, but nothing can be done just yet between these two drivers. Matt Daly currently heading around Druids, so we'll jump on board with him in just a moment. On for a really good little fight here between these three drivers. It's more like a two-car battle at the moment, but it could be three as we head into Shell Oils. Nicely negotiated there. Andy Craker does close. Guy Swarbrick carrying plenty of speed as he goes through the right-hander, but we go on board with Matt Daly. As I say, that 16-second gap, it turns into 17 seconds. A truly astonishing victory for Matt Daly as he crosses the line and takes race 1 victory here. True domination. I expect no less at this point. Matt Daly really impressing as he tries to close up that championship points gap to this driver here, Colin Knief, as Andy Craker and Guy Swarbrick had a collision by the looks of things. They are able to continue on potentially. Colin Knief, we jump on board with, he crosses the line to take away P2. Still has a substantial lead, but it was a tricky P2, and must be said, he really did have to fight for it. As we see Andrew Whitehead classified P3 in the end. Miles Davis will bring it home P4 after an outside shout at the podium here. Still we'll have a look at this battle though, involving Guy Swarbrick, Andy Craker and Jack Hodson. It's separated out a little bit as it stands at the moment. Alan Matthews then brings it home to finish in the top 5. As we see Mike Hilton heading through Deer League in just moment to bring it home in P6. Shortly behind, it's going to be Jack Cotton bringing it home in P7. And then we have Guy Swarbrick, P8, ahead of Andy Craker in the end. Andy Craker in P2 at 1 point in this race, but will still store a couple of points at least. Followed by Paul Millman will be our final point scorer. That is then going to be Alex Smith, Steve Knight, and Andy Webb, your classified finishers for this evening's race 1. Don't go anywhere, though, because in just a few minutes, we're going to enjoy some reverse grid action here at Oulton Park. It's race 2 coming up next. Welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Here is our starting order. It is going to be Jack Hodson and Mike Hilton on row 1, followed by Alan Matthews, Miles Davis on the second row of the grid. Then we have Andrew Whitehead and Colin Keneath, followed by Matt Daly and Guy Swarbrick. That leaves us with Andy Craker, Paul Millman, Alex Smith, Steve Knight and Andy Webb, your 13-car grid for this reverse grid race here at Oulton Park. Race 1. And plenty of action. I am sure this reverse order is going to deliver much the same. We can hear these twin cams already hitting the red lines as the pistons dance through the bonnet. It's 6 red lights on the gantry and we are away here. Let's see who gets a good start. Everyone gets a fantastic launch there, it must be said. Miles Davis goes alongside Alan Matthews and actually sives on through in between Mike Hilton and Alan Matthews, or at least tries to. Is boxed off by Alan Matthews, who remains in second position. Watch out for Mike Hilton, who has actually managed to claw back a great run, as we have big issues for Guy Swarbrick and Paul Millman pirouetting through the air, and they have to return to the pit. Unfortunately for those drivers here, as Andrew Whitehead gets a little bit scruffy as we run it down towards the island bend in just a moment. That allows Matt Daly to come alongside here. Mike Hilton is running in P6 and Colin Keneath into P7. Andy Craker having further difficulties at the start of this race, tumbling down to P8. And Alex Smith has a look down the inside. Let's see what Alex does. We go side by side through the Shell Oils corner. It's a brave driver who can do this. Gets nose out in front, does Alex Smith. It's all going to be a question of who can shift the gears better, who has the car with more legs, as you dive into Britain's in just a moment. Nice, confident move down the inside for Alex Smith. Back end of Andy Craker's car actually jumping into the air there. That's impressive stuff, but he does actually get a better run, does Andy, as we head on to the next part of the lap. And that is going to be Andy Craker back into 7th, unless Alex Smith has anything to say about it. Goes deep onto the brakes, we make contact, and it's nearly a tyre barrier for Alex Smith. Meanwhile, out in the front, Alan Matthews has found a way on through on Miles Davis and now leads. Miles Davis in second ahead of Andrew Whitehead, who is very close indeed as we run down towards Druids. We've got plenty of cars occupying this part of the track, actually, as we see around the right-hand we go. Andrew Whitehead having a look to see if he can find a gap that his 105 series car can fit. Goes down the inside, does Andrew Whitehead, very late on the brakes, in to lodge. That's not at all, I mean, we've seen a couple of taking there, but it's not the most common. Nice move by Andrew Whitehead there, up into second position as he now sets his sights on Alan Matthews up in front. Look back on to the start finish straight. Colin Keneath ahead of Jack Hodson now in to P4. And plenty of battling going on elsewhere throughout the field. Here we see Matt Daly finding way past Andy Webb. Matt Daly really down in P9, not the start to the first race that potentially he would have wanted. At least he is still within a point scoring position and has plenty of time left in this race to make a difference. Once again, just in case you haven't been watching along so far, a reminder, apologies if it gets a little bit quiet. I am very much into, I know there's fantastic racing action going. I wish I was able to keep up with it a little bit more. Trying. But we are seeing some fantastic stuff out on track at the moment. Andy Craker ahead of Mike Hilton, and then we have Jack Hodson with Matt Daly pushing on behind, trying to find a way back past. Behind is Andy Webb and Alex Smith. Having a look down the inside is Matt Daly, making himself known to his rival as we run on through Druids. In just this fantastic stuff. Here we're going to be heading through the lodge, and we're still side by side. Matt Daly says thank you very much and takes P7. And with a nice slide there to finish off with that flourish, I suspect it was entirely intentional. Or at least, I'm sure if I asked Matt, he'd say that absolutely wasn't style points. But either way, just find a way past and up into P7. Mike Hilton runs in P6 at the moment, as we see the two cars behind him actually a little bit too deep, perhaps into the old hall corner, finding a bit of grass and able to continue. mile out in front. We can see it's Alan Matthews versus Andrew Whitehead for the race lead. Andrew taking the race lead as we run on through to the Shell Oils corner in just a moment. Meanwhile, Colin Keefe's found a way back past Miles Davis. Miles does have the inside here around Shell Oils, so might get a cleaner run out if he plays his cards right. He doesn't this time around, unfortunately, so has to relent. Steve Knight very courteously, very nicely, allows some of those drivers on the lap to head on through. Andrew Whitehead leading us then after that brief battle with Alan Matthews. Colin Keefe gets ahead of Miles Davis, and this is a familiar position to what we saw in the previous race. Actually, we saw Alan Matthews, Colin Keefe, Miles Davis in these positions in the previous race for quite a while, actually. We were really enjoying running along with each other, and Miles Davis was doing his utmost to keep pressure on Colin Keefe. Good job of it, and see if he can replicate that feat here in race 2. Here we go, side by side on the run out from Druids. We're going to be heading into the lodge in just a moment. Colin Keefe does get a better run, goes down the inside, and that move is sealed. But just like Matt Daly, the back end does kick out ever so slightly, does compromise his run onto the start-finish straight. Should be able to continue with a comfortable lead. Is side by side with Alan Matthews at the moment. Miles Davis running in P4. Head is Andrew Whitehead, has a 2.5 second lead in this race, and this is perfect for him. If anything, he'll be hoping that Alan Matthews can keep that pressure mounted against Colin Keefe, because if Alan is able to do that, Colin will be focusing on the car behind and defending against that, than trying to close up on Andrew Whitehead. Not saying that Colin Keefe can't do both. He's a very good driver, of course, but it might just make things a little bit easier for Andrew Whitehead as that gap does ever so slightly expand as we head into Shell Oils. Once more, has a look around the outside, and does Alan Matthews, not injured just yet. Miles Davis is still very much in the mix here, running in P4, but don't count him out. As we see Andrew Whitehead just running from Britain's, these drivers getting very close. We did see it was on the exit of Britain's through that curb where it went wrong for Colin Keefe at the start of the previous race. So he'll be careful not to do the same thing once more, as Miles Davis gets a great run out of Britain. We head up the hilltop and is technically in the lead of this race now. In the lead of this battle now. Gets a nose out in front. Is side by side with Alan Matthews. Is still side by side as they ran through his laps, but does eventually find a way past, and that is going to be Matt Daly potentially. No, he does in fact collect it. Is behind Andy Craker by a little bit more after that recollection. But still, not perhaps the reverse race I would have expected from Matt Daly so far, given just how impressive his qualifying pace was more than anything. Matt Daly remains in P6. Andy Craker goes over the grass, is able to pick up pieces. 1 second is the gap between Matt Daly and Andy Craker as it stands. Meanwhile, Colin Keefe looks pretty comfortable in P2. Michael trying to close down on Andrew Whitehead. Meanwhile, Miles Davis is the man trying to defend a spot on the podium this time out. We did say how great it would be. Another outside chance at the podium for him in this, only his 3rd race in Historic's 5th race weekend overall, and we are potentially seeing that once more if he can keep Alan Matthews at bay. So we're going to enjoy. Here we see side by side Alan Matthews and Miles Davis as we run through his lot once more. Sorry, no, that is his lot. And we see Alan Matthews running in P3. We've got a huge array of cars now beginning to form up. As we see Alan Matthews leading Miles Davis just ahead of Andy Craker and Matt Daly, with Mike Hilton in the mix as well. And it goes wrong for Miles Davis. Just collects a little bit of grass. That spits him off. That is the unforgiving nature of Oulton Park and these cars as well. Miles Davis finds himself in P6 in this race. What a shame. It might be under threat here and might find himself losing out against Mike Hilton at the moment. As we see Alan Matthews remains on the podium. Then Andy Craker is closing up, as is Matt Daly, and we're going to have another 3-car battle for the podium in this race. Here we see Andy Craker mounting pressure against Alan Matthews as we run on through into his lots in just a moment. Still have the hilltop to negotiate first. Yeah, Andy Craker and Matt Daly in tow as well. This is going to be a tall order for Alan Matthews here in this race. I should add, I did wonder if Colin would be closing up on Andrew Whitehead. That doesn't appear to be the case at the moment. In terms of their pace, last lap, 153.2 for Andrew Whitehead, 154.0 for Colin Knief. With Andrew Whitehead at 153.2 being his best. In fact, both these drivers, that is their best lap as well. That's as fast as currently Colin Knief can get underneath his car. But Andrew Whitehead flying along with 53.2, it must be said. Really impressive stuff there from Andrew Whitehead to be leading so impressively there. But we see Alan Matthews in P3. Matt Daly finds a way past Andy Craker for P4 and is now going to be the driver to lead the charge, potentially against Alan Matthews. It's not though. They go side by side, bump sides. That is typical touring cars stuff. You trade paint on the doors, that's what you want to do. But Andy Craker catches just a bit too much of the grass, and there has been a repeated tale here at Oulton Park this evening. Another driver falls foul of the foliage, and that is going to be Andy Craker off and in to a distant barrier. So it's Andrew Whitehead, Colin Knief and Alan Matthews. Matt Daly now is pretty much released and free to try and hunt down Alan Matthews at this point. It's very interesting, this fight for the final spot on the podium. Elsewhere in the pack, we see Andy Craker against Miles Davis. These two were battling a little bit higher up earlier on. We'll be enjoying their run out here. Just behind as well is going to be Mike Hilton. Alex Smith's in the mix there as well. Oh, Alex Smith is up on two wheels there as well. As we see Jack Hodson, P8, Miles Webb, Andy Webb, P9, and guys from P10 as well. So a couple of important points on the cards there for those two drivers as well.
Here we see the battle shaping up between Alan Matthews and Matt Daly now. Just over 10 minutes to go in this race. Matt Daly does get a nose out in front, but we're going to have the corner of Islops to negotiate first. Negotiated well by Alan Matthews this time around. We head up the Clay Hill in just a moment. Carrying plenty of speed, getting another huge elevation change for these cars. To negotiate, not too much power under their belts, to say they are light, of course, that help. But side by side, we go with Matt Daly hanging it round the outside. In fact, the car leans as he tries to get as much grip as possible out of those tyres, out of that chassis. And we are still side by side, and the exit of Drew is actually really clean, really nice racing from these two. Into the large right-hander we go. And it's Alan Matthews, who might be going too deep into score, was a bit too aggressive. I thought he was carrying a lot of pace. Back end just gave up on him. And obviously, Matt Daly wasn't at fault there, but just clipped the back end of him. Matt Daly's car unaffected. Alan Matthews, unfortunately, was affected. Runs down into P4. Hopefully, Alan is able to get the ar pointed in the right direction. Can get a bit of pace back under his belt and can close up on Matt Daly, potentially. He's had a great drive so far. He had a really strong drive in as well. Everyone, I must say. Perhaps, and I know I always say this, but genuinely, everyone out here at Oulton this evening has impressed me. Everyone seems to have had a pretty nice run out there. A few. Okay. I'm going to stop talking now. Commentator's curse is still in full force, even if Reeve isn't this evening. There we go. Andrew Whitehead. Timing. So. Commentator's curse is such a... You know what, Andy? I don't blame you from DNFing from that session. It's kind of my fault. Anyway, Andrew Whitehead leads by 5 seconds against Colin Knief. Has done a really impressive job out in front end of the pack. Controlling things very nicely is Andrew. Then we have Colin Knief running in P2, Matt Daly in P3, rounding out our podium. looking on with just under 4 minutes to go in this race. We're seeing a great little battle here between Andy Webb and Guy Swarbrick. They head on to the start-finish straight. Guy Swarbrick putting that pressure on the car with the pink livery to try and find a way past up into P8. That would be hugely beneficial in the championship standings for Guy. Let's have a look at how those championship standings are shaping up after the first race of the evening. Colin Knief still with that impressive lead, as it looks like Guy Swarbrick might have run a little bit wide in the corner. It does continue on, but has built up the gap ever so slightly. Colin Knief with 98 points. That's ahead of Andrew Whitehead in P2 with 74. Then we have Matt Daly in P3 with 70. So closing up is Matt Daly. Then we have Alan Matthews in P4 with 50 points, just ahead of Miles Davis in P5 with 46. Then it's Greg Young in P6 with 30, ahead of Andy Craker in P7 with 78. Jack Hodson in P8 with 26, equaling Andy Webb, who we're on board at the moment. There in 26, then we have in P10 is going to be Guy Swarbrick with 20 points to his name. So John Cole, Mike Hilton, Paul Milne, Alex Smith, and Steve Knight, remaining drivers in the championship standings. Steve Knight, the only driver so far yet to score a point. Who knows? Still a few laps left in this one. Potentially, this could be the race. We got to see Steve get a few points in the fight in this season. Jump back aboard though with Andy Webb, who runs in P8 at the moment. That is not without competition though from Guy Swarbrick. It must be said, it's been a great watching along for a couple of laps now. Matt Daly's currently running in P5, and there goes Andy Webb, too deep into the Druids. Right-hander tries to carry too much speed, understeers off and into the grass. Will be able to continue on, just unfortunately quite a few seconds behind. Guy Swarbrick is promoted up into P8 there pretty comfortably as well, so should be able to cruise on home with that P8. Let's have a quick look through our order then as it stands at the moment. It's Andrew Whitehead leading second, and Colin Knief, followed by Matt Daly, Alan Matthews, Miles Davis in P5, then Mike Hilton P6, Jack Hodson P7, Guy Swarbrick P8, then we have Andy Webb running P10, and then Steve Knight is your final competitor still present in the session this evening. Timer has indeed hit 0 in this race, which means we are on the penultimate lap. We're going to jump on board with Andrew Whitehead, who we haven't looked at too much in this race, it must be said. Had a little bit of challenge early on, but then after that has just looked pretty comfortable, it must be said. It's running along in P1, a 5-second lead. Colin Knief wasn't able to close that up in the end. He would get past some traffic in the form of Steve Knight as we're running Shell Oils. Yeah, Guy Swarbrick, no. Colin Knief not able to mount a charge against Andrew Whitehead in this one. Still will lead the championship by a very impressive margin. That does just make things a little bit better off for the fight for P2 in the championship between Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly. Matt Daly's down in P3. Andrew Whitehead leads, so whilst that gap did close up in the first race this evening, it will actually expand over. Here we see on the penultimate lap then, heading into Lodge in just a moment, it is going to be Andrew Whitehead. 4.2 seconds is lead that he commands over Colin Keefe, as I was just discussing then. Colin did close up so slightly through the final sector of that last lap. And don't count anything out. Anything could happen. We have certainly seen that in the past. But Andrew Whitehead looks pretty happy out there. Have a look to see if anyone else is pretty close in terms of the track action. Mike Hilton and Jack Hodson look like they could be having one last blast, one last fight in this race as they head round Lodge themselves. We'll keep an eye on that one. Likewise for Miles Davis and Alan Matthews in this race as well. They're only a few car lengths separated from each other as Andrew Whitehead heads through Shell Oils for one last time in this race. There is Colin Keefe. He has actually closed down by around about a second in just the first few corners. Could he be on a late race charge? That would be enthralling to see if that is the case. Let's just see if that plays out for him. Hilton and Jack Hodson are still enjoying their battle as we see Jack Hodson go side by side with Mike Hilton. Now they are heading up on throwbacks on the Oulton track. Let's see if we can catch them there. Now just heading into Shell Oils in just a moment. Very close indeed. Actually, a little bit of contact between the two. Mike Hilton very courteously backs off ever so slightly. Jack Hodson remains out in front of this battling duo. But I'm gonna jump on board with Andrew Whitehead though, because what a drive it has been for Andrew, just like it was for our previous race winner this evening. Just a really nicely executed, actually quite boring race, all things considered, in terms of the race for the leader. But that's sometimes what you want when you want to take away 25 points. As Andrew Whitehead heads on to the start-finish straight and takes race to victory, weaving across the circuit in celebration as well. Congratulations, Andrew, a great drive overall. Then we have Colin Keefe in P2 and just shortly behind Matt Daly in P3. That was hotting up that battle at 5 minutes more. We could have been on for a three-way fight for the race lead between our top three in the championship. Didn't quite work out this time, maybe next. As we see Miles Davis heads into the lodge just ahead of Alan Matthews here. It's looking very close indeed, but nothing that Alan Matthews can do this time around, and it will be Miles Davis once again just about missing out on the podium. Miles Davis brings it home in a P4. Alan Matthews rounding out your top five then. As we did have a brief look at this battle going on earlier on, let's see if anything can be made of it. As we see Jack Hodson heads across the line to take P6 overall, just ahead of Mike Hilton as well in P7. Then we have Guy Swarbrick, who is just heading around the lodge, winning out in the end against Andy Webb in that earlier battle that we enjoyed, for a couple more points to be added to his tally in the championship so far. Guy Swarbrick brings it home in P8. Then we have a little bit of a wait here for P9. I just want to have a look at. We have seen the brief return, at least at Anglesey, of Victory Donuts. Are we going to see any so far this evening? No, I think everyone's being well behaved. As we see Andy Webb having a few difficulties. Hopefully he can bring it home. He will indeed. He's on the start finish straight, just ahead of Alex Smith, who will be your final point scoring driver in this race, as he has a rather eclectic. I mean, you went for style, Alex, but I mean, at least I think you went. Okay. Yeah. I expect nothing less. And he is actually still classified. There we go. There's your top 10. Thank you, Alex. There we go. That brings an end to this evening's racing action at Oulton Park. Hope you've enjoyed watching, as I've enjoyed trying to commentate this evening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in a week's time with our Juliettas here at Oulton.